welcome to 10 Very Big Books, a Malazan Readthrough podcast. My name is Peter Bond, and with me today is my friend and closest confidant, India Jones.
Hello.
And our producer, AJ Flaherty.
I am here as well.
No bells and whistles today.
Yeah, no.
We're being professional. And last is Joshua Baker.
No nicknames needed. I am here.
No nicknames needed. That's right. We put on our most professional looking hats because we finished Reaper's Gale. And as usual, we have called up one Steven Erikson to talk about the book and talk about our experience and talk about his experience writing the book. Hey, Steve, thanks for coming on the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Glad to be here.
How's your 2022 going so far? Off to a good start?
Yeah, the writing's going well. Working on 3 novels at once, which is something I've never done before.
3?
Yeah.
How did you decide that?
Well, when COVID hit, I write in cafes, and so we got a lockdown everywhere, and it stalled me in my tracks. So I was trying to figure out how do I sort of jumpstart things, and what I did was I started writing at home a short sort of weird science fiction time travel novel. And that got me sort of back up to speed, at least writing, just to keep my skills honed or whatever. And then eventually we reached a point where I can be in cafes because I'm vaccinated, et cetera, masked up. And then I switched over to the 2 fantasy novels. So Walk in Shadow, and then No Life Forsaken, which is the second of the new trilogy. So I'm alternating those 2 when I'm in cafes. I just use different venues. And then I'm still working on the time travel novel at home while I watch hockey games and now baseball. I just turn the sound off and I start writing.
Now, is this like a contemporary thing? Like, is it take place in the 21st century, or is it like a distant?
Yeah, it's mimetic. Well, I mean, it's science fiction, but it's our world. And it's our world and then not our world. So,
Question about the watching baseball. You're actually the second, I would say, expert in a field I know who practices their craft while watching baseball. Peter and I's tuba professor watches baseball on mute and just plays his tuba for like 4 hours a day. Is there something about the sport that is especially mind-numbing that allows you to slip into the groove?
No, not really. I mean, hockey's the same way. And, the game has gotten very fast now. Mm-hmm. So if you're not watching, you can miss a lot. But then I just rewind. So I look up every now and then and check on the score. Mm-hmm. But then sometimes if I sort of really get into the writing, I'll miss half a period. The baseball has just started up. So it's been a long time. It's nice to watch the Jays. So I'm watching.
Nice.
Very nice.
Now, do you think this sci-fi novel will see the light of day, or is this going to just be a personal thing?
It's a good question. I really don't know. I don't know. I'm going to send it off to a couple people and see what their response is. Like what I've got so far, which is about 180 pages, thereabouts. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. It's kind of a thought experiment. It's more very much old-fashioned traditional science fiction. So there's not a lot of action. There are events, but there's not a lot of sort of, high-end style action.
And now is the plan still to have Walk in Shadow out next, even though you're starting up this next Witness book?
No, Walk in Shadows is a monster. It's going to take a couple of years at least. And then when I switch to No Life Forsaken, that's just fine. It's just like the God is Not Willing. It just rolls along. So it's like there's 3 different sort of expressions of creativity at work here, and each one is quite unique, and so they don't overlap in that sense.
Now, judging by some of the stuff you've posted on your Facebook, I assume that this second Witness book will have some 7 cities correlation to it, or is that just...
Yeah, it starts in 7 cities, yeah.
Well, I guess we'll see a little bit more about that, but always interesting to hear what you're working on nowadays. So we just finished up our reread of Reaper's Gale. And I asked you this before. I'm just curious. Do you think you have any regrets about that book when you think back on it?
I don't think back on books. Sorry. They're done, right?
Once they're done, they're gone.
Fair.
Even regret is a wasted sentiment. It's a wasted emotion. It's indulgent in this respect. So there's nothing. Yeah, it is what I wrote, and there it is. So Why? Do you think I should be regretting something?
Not what I was getting at. I just, I don't know.
Fucking funny. Sorry.
No, but it's a good attitude.
Steve, I don't know if we've asked before. Do you have any siblings?
I have an older brother, 5 years older.
Okay, so I mean, Reaper's Gale is such a.
That.
I think we did because there's so much brother stuff in this series. I feel so bad for the Sangar brothers, and I know I'm so impressed you did that because with the exception of Troll, I don't like any of them. So I guess what I'm just getting at is like what were you drawing from anything in particular when you were basically introducing an entire family and then just eradicating them, I guess is a blunt way to put it.
Well, one observes family dynamics, one lives through them and then observes them in other families. And just setting up, I'd already set up the premise of the brothers, so I had to deal with them in some fashion or another. But each took their own path, and that was sort of the whole purpose of it. Yeah, each was driven by their own needs. Yeah. And in many respects, I guess, that led to tragic ends.
Yeah, there was 4 pages in this book where I was like, and that's right, Troll and Breeze and Tehol, the best brothers, they're all going to be together, and then you took it from us.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's been such a bit since we finished this book. I just remembered that we leave Lethris under the rule of Tehol.
Mm-hmm. the obvious leader,
and that's just
it's funny. I just thought the same thing.
Yeah, it was like it just like emerged from my brain. Like, remember that? I'm just like, feel free not to answer this, but like, is this a storyline that we get to see go farther? Because I could see this being like this happens, and then we don't come back to it for the rest of the book, really, or the rest of the series. Like, is this something that comes back in these 10?
Let's just say there's some cameos.
Sure.
Oh, that's exciting.
All right.
That's all we need, really.
Fair enough. Yeah, that's
just a little sprinkle.
Yeah.
Follow up, if you could cameo on one television show, what would it be?
I almost cameoed on Game of Thrones. I was living in the UK, and the call came out for extras for anybody who could ride a horse. And I did seriously consider popping over to Ireland and just having sort of an inside joke there. I wouldn't identify myself. I would just, be there.
Oh man,
that's hysterical.
I'd love you to cameo on the Wheel of Time show. I think that would be incredible.
That would be fun. I don't think I'll be asked, but yeah, maybe a red shirt on Picard or something.
Oh, there it is.
Put you on Below Decks or something. Yeah. Speaking of the Wheel of Time show, and I guess just television in general, what besides hockey and baseball, is there anything particular that you've been watching that has kind of caught your eye in the last bit?
I thought Arcane was excellent.
Oh, yes.
The Arcane twist from Steve.
Yeah.
I have a question, just really quickly. When you say baseball, is it like what kind of baseball?
It's our baseball, India.
MLB baseball.
Okay.
Yeah. Toronto Blue Jays.
Didn't know that. I don't even know. I don't know what that is either. I don't know anything about that. So checking in. Thank you.
So does this mean you're becoming a big League of Legends fan now? Just turning into a big gamer?
No. I knew nothing about League of Legends, and I think I preferred that.
That is the right choice.
Just go in and take the product on the television on its own merit. Mm-hmm. And it was, the animation was superb. The ability to I guess map on all of the actors' expressions and emotions to actually convey and communicate to the audience. I thought was brilliantly done.
We've asked you about anime in the past, but have you watched other like animated, not necessarily anime, but like have you watched animated stuff in the last while or?
No, not really.
I mean, it's just great looking animation. I don't know a ton about the style of it, but.
Well, things are changing fast, right? I mean, Unreal Tournament or Unreal Engine version 5
dropped. Yeah,
is absolutely breathtaking.
Wild.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think once they release MetaHuman, it will really open things up for independent filmmaking without the need for sets and cast and all the other stuff. Because Unreal Engine can do it all, right? It's got all the camera angles, choice of lenses, lighting, you name it, it can do it. So that I think will really open things up. We'll see a lot more independent productions, and that would be really cool.
Yeah.
Do you see any path into an animated Malazan thing?
I can't comment on that right now.
Ooh. A little dodge from Steve.
Okay.
Interesting. Interesting.
I don't know if I could watch a Malazan animated show because I can't picture any human that isn't real, and it would really mess with my brain to see humans or anything that I've read about.
Joshua, have you looked at the metahuman stuff?
I don't know what that is.
Right.
Me either.
Well, Google it and you'll see what I mean. It comes as close to crossing the uncanny valley. I'm glad it doesn't, but it's very close.
It's wild stuff. I've seen just like, tech demos and stuff, like the Matrix demo and whatnot was in Unreal 5. It's wild.
Oh,
it's
I don't like the first image has given me chills. That is
too realistic.
I don't like it.
But I mean, you can still tell that it's not real. It's just
but there's imperfections in a way I've never seen on a.
Oh, yeah. I see. They look like video game people.
Kind of, yeah.
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 But more.
But more. Video game plus. Speaking of video game,
I knew it. I was gonna jump you into AJ.
You may have heard in the last few weeks of this game called Elden Ring that came out. George R.R. Martin was a consultant on it, or like wrote some of the lore and stuff. And then it's this huge world with this like really, really dense like history and lore and stuff. And I just didn't know if you had heard anything about it. Because it's certainly I've had people talk to me about how it's like thematically it's like the Malazan of video games is kind of the thing that I've heard people say, just in terms of like the way that the lore is presented and stuff. And it's just like, there is so much stuff that's like, hey, this thing exists and we're not going to really tell you about it, but this is how the world is. And you're just kind of thrown in and experiencing it.
Yeah, I've heard a few sort of comments, sort of Malazan vibes, quote unquote. But I'm certainly hoping that's not, storyline and plot and character.
No. Yeah, it's purely vibes and like the thematic elements.
Cool.
Yeah, it's very, very interesting.
Speaking of games, I did want to. I was just speaking to your illustrious colleague Ian Cameron Esselmont, and I was prodding him about Malazan in the realm of tabletop RPG publications. Is there, he made it sound like in the past there had been some exploration of this. I just feel like this is fertile ground, no?
Yeah, we have been, approached by a number of groups, but it seems that there is, so far at least, no staying power. We start negotiating with them. We start, I guess, discussing sort of structural elements, visual elements, that kind of thing. And then they go quiet and that's kind of it. So that's happened, I'd say 4 or 5 times now. So we're kind of jaded when somebody contacts us because this just keeps happening. I'm aware of a group that is working on something, but they're doing it on spec at the moment, and they'll have to get something ready before they come and talk to us.
Yeah. All right, should we turn back to Reaper's Gale? I feel like we barely touched the book ostensibly.
Yes, I agree. Where was the last time we saw Perrin?
Bone Hunter's book on a boat with Absalar. No, sorry.
No,
he's leading that army. He's leading that army.
Right.
Okay.
That's all I remember.
Because he went to find Hedge, and then Hedge helped him find.
They killed that plague god.
Yeah.
Has he seen Tavor yet?
Right.
No.
Huh.
Yeah, that's it's definitely not gonna happen until book 9 or 10.
I just thought about that.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about Tavor, and then I was like, Perrin, and then I was like, wait, they haven't seen each other.
Yeah.
Wow. Do you guys ever think about that?
Yeah, every once in a while I'm like, there's this character who we had an entire book with a storyline, and I just have completely forgot about them.
Right?
Yeah. I actually would love to say we've started Toll the Hounds, and I do want to know if you ever had a doubt in your mind on like, I know they haven't been to Druzistan in 7 books, and really they haven't seen any of these characters since book 3, but they'll still love them. Did you ever doubt that? Because you were right, but it's a bold assumption.
Well, I knew the eighth book was going to return us to the setting of the first book. And it sets something in place that has a knock-on effect to books 9 and 10, obviously, although indirectly for the most part. But I remember, sitting down to write it, and it felt like I was coming home because I was so familiar with, Darujhistan and the characters. And so it was nice to return to them.
Nice. Yeah, I'm thrilled to be back.
Yeah,
it's a problematic book for a lot of people, so I'll be interested to get your take on it.
Well, that's foreboding.
Problematic? Why?
Yeah.
It's primarily told in Krupp's voice.
Well, that's the perfect book.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't. Thank God I'm not audiobooking this one. I would
actually,
lose my mind.
I remember you telling us this in book 1 and being livid, and now I'm here for it.
Yeah.
I would lose my mind.
I thought that was so interesting to like couch this whole book in like it's being told from Krupp's point, like the whole prologue, and then ending with, all right, well, let me tell you about this thing. Like that was so. I don't know. It's just so cool because like none of the books really, except for like the first one, which starts off with like, this is a history, and we never get like a voice, like there's never like, here's somebody telling a story. That's just like really cool. Was that intentional to give this book kind of I guess an angle?
Yeah, of course it's intentional.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, fair enough. What was the intention, I guess?
It's more, and I've described this many times, it's a cipher for the series. So if you can work out Toll the Hounds and what it's doing structurally, that is kind of a smaller scale version of what's happening in the entire series. But you'll only get all that after you completed the series.
Has anyone ever written a thesis on that statement you just said? Because I feel like it's fertile ground for a while.
Well, no one's written a thesis on it, but YouTube has had a number of people discuss this at length. So A.P. Kahneman's Critical Dragon, Philip Chase, and a gentleman named Niflrog, who's done a phenomenal job.
Awesome.
So it has been discussed, but you guys aren't there yet. So
yeah, sorry. Yeah, we've moved ahead to this.
No spoilies. No spoilies.
We read 3 chapters of Toll the Hound. We're chomping at the bit.
Yeah.
So to bring it back to a Reaper's Gale storyline, so we have this, your Udonis, your Thea Sengar story. They're on their journey, and listen, it's gone. We're done. We're done book 7. But I will say, obviously there's these elements of I deign to use the word, but kind of a postmodern-esque element in there where some kind of a meta-esque commentary about the story. And I wonder why you chose to bring that those meta thoughts to Adonis and to have that be a part of that storyline.
I think by this point I was probably deliberately dismantling the hero's journey, and because I have particular issues regarding it. And so because the hero's journey is an essential aspect of that which preceded postmodernism and became a target for postmodernism. So Udonis was certainly bringing that to light. But this relates also to the whole meta thing I was talking about with Toll the Hounds being the cipher, is that there are kind of fractal levels to it. So a single character can actually play out something that is fractally connected to the entire novel and potentially to the entire series. And those are kinds of hints being dropped in terms of how to read this series. So that was kind of the role that Udonis was playing. It was sort of the jaded modern audience taking a second look at the hero's journey.
From the Udonis group, a real standout character in this one was our good friend Clip. How do you write someone as obnoxious? What are like some easy traits you can sprinkle in to make an audience immediately disdains a character?
I find often it's quite a small thing. It's you give the character a physical habit, a gesture.
I knew you were going to say it. Yeah, the stupid rings, and the laughing at comments.
Which would, I've certainly met people who do, weird things with pens and pencils in their fingers and all that kind of stuff. And it gets irritating. It doesn't take long before you kind of fed up with it. So, the other example would be Terralak Veed. And
the spitting in the hair back.
Yeah.
Oh my God. That sucked.
So
that was
you pick
disgusting.
particular habits and gestures. If they're doing something odious or irritating, then that's an easy way of doing it. But then he's got his own particular point of view, and so I have to write from that point of view. And if that involves a certain amount of arrogance in the character, then I have to portray that. Ooh, dead silence.
Yeah, I'm just. Yeah. I'm trying to think of a way to segue it, but I can't.
Okay, I'll ask you guys. Red Mask.
Oh. And that's where I was trying to get to. Yeah. Thank you so much.
We yelled a lot about this.
Yeah.
I've already said I want to reread all of the Red Mask. I think I mentioned in the epigraph episode with Pete. I already want to reread this book and completely rethink everything I heard about Red Mask, and I still don't think I'll be satisfied.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to do that until we finish the series. But I'm very mad at you.
It's an interesting little, I mean, I really enjoyed writing that stuff, but I also knew that it was subverting a whole lot of stuff going on. And I've used the word fractal. Do you guys all get what I'm talking about there?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that was very much a storyline that was a kind of fractal expression of a lot of the warfare that's going on in the series, and the point of it all. There being actually no point to it all. So, but it was. I remember I certainly enjoyed writing it, and I knew it was going to finish with a bit of a bang, in an unexpected way. But also there was the visual image of the two armies covered in mud, which I thought couldn't be more appropriate for the absurdity of war, because it makes everybody the same. Right.
And no point in having colors on your armor when you're covered in mud. Yeah, everyone's.
Which brings me to the big question I think that I have and a lot of people have about Red Mask. Is Red Mask leathery, or like what is the yes? Just yes. Okay.
So does that mean, okay, so follow-up question, and if this gets answered later, you can say it gets answered later. Does that mean that the history that people say of Red Mask is incorrect, and this is not that same Red Mask? Or are you going to just smile and never answer that question until the day you die?
I'm smiling right now.
I know, yeah.
Well, all right.
You're so, overall, I think if someone was to ask me, like, why is Malazan really good? I would say, imagine the most badass shit ever all the time. And then every time you're like, it couldn't get more, this is the greatest. But they all trip on their shoes and they fart. Every badass character or moment just is like ripped out from under them. And it's so satisfying every time. And also the worst every time. Like AJ, your thought on dragons.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yes. I had this thought about dragons. Every dragon in this book just kind of eats it spectacularly. I mean, the sisters obviously, but then even when Ruin finally, transforms, just gets shot out of the sky and is forced to retreat. Like what? Like, was that in an effort to kind of subvert fantasy in a way, or is that just subverting these characters of like they're not actually as powerful as they think they are, or is it kind of both? Or
it's both. It's both for sure. I mean, there needs to be leveling factors at work. Otherwise, you run the risk of overpowering a particular entity or character, and then that forces everybody into the role of subservient or victim. And I mean, one can run with that for a while in books, but I would not want to see it constantly repeated so that every time a dragon shows up, everybody falls to their knees.
Yeah,
that wouldn't quite work. And there's an irreverence to the Malazan Marine, anyways, that doesn't react in predictable fashions when it comes to something like a dragon showing up. They just do their job. Sure. It doesn't matter what's going to challenge them; they're going to respond to it. And this becomes very important when you get to book 9. But of course, you're not there yet. So
right. And so I think the saying that the Ridgeburners act in ways, or I guess the Bone Hunters act in ways that you maybe wouldn't expect, when the Leathery are throwing that sorcery at them down in the village, and our sweet Beak makes the force field, and then they just invite the eater in. Like that's just another element of that, right?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Speaking of Beak, I don't really have much to say. It's just like just that storyline was just really I think incredible. through this book, of just like this like purely innocent person, just like finally being shown some, you know, respect and like being treated like a person by, you know, sort and stuff, and then just like you know, ultimately making that ultimate sacrifice for, you know, people that he sees as friends. I don't really have a question. That's just like great. I loved it a whole lot.
Well, he sort of showed up on the page. I hadn't written him before. His first scene, he just sort of showed up, and then I found myself pulled into that point of view. And then I realized that there was a history there and a pretty dark secret in the past. And yeah, it became a very interesting character to write, to really contrast the internal landscapes for each of us, how we view ourselves and how we think others view us, and contrast that with the external. So how everybody else sees him, and quite often his inability to actually understand or know how he is seen by others. But he's guided more by his assumptions of how he is seen by others.
Right.
And that tends to be quite like self-inflicted wounds on the character. So, and then the ending sort of showed itself to me. And I think in the original version, I don't know if I took him through Hood's Gate, but I think I then went back and said, I can't stop at that point. I got to take him through.
Oh, a beautiful closure. So
when you're writing, and for like specifically Beak, when did you realize like, oh, he's going to die? Like, and did that like impact anything like while you were writing about him?
I mean, even though the novels are plotted, so I know where I'm ending, I leave enough room for spontaneity. And so stories will pick up that I did not expect. And then I have to think about how I can make sure it still stays part of the narrative. It doesn't pull us too far away. But no, I did not know Beak's demise until maybe 3 pages before I got there.
Wow.
But you see, that's part of I write to entertain myself. And that's, you know, sort of the pleasure one gets when you created a narrative up to a certain point, and you then have to work out where it's going to go and what are the repercussions of it. To contrast that with, say, Red Mask, where I knew the ending of that one.
You're the only one. You're the only one who knew the ending of that one.
Classic Steve. I know how this is going to end. A whole army from book 3 is going to appear through a magic portal, which, for the record, I called a few episodes from the end, and it's my proudest moment today.
You did, yeah.
Speaking of things you knew in advance, in book, when's the first book that we're here? Is it book 5? Book 5, yes. In book 5, every time I would say the Atriprida Jan Tovis, Peter would say Twilight. And it got really on my nerves. And why did you feel the need to include an entire sub-religion on this continent of water witch people? Is there more of them? Because I'm obsessed with all of it.
Oh, you just wait. Once you get past Toll the Hounds, we return to this setting, and that's where the end run is. So don't worry, there's plenty more to come.
I'm so hyped for the shake.
So when we're returning to the Empire here, why did you choose to examine kind of secret polices as a structure and their inclusion in the Empire at this state and as a plotline in this book? I think Tan Al-Yathfanar is the first point of view in chapter 1. I could be wrong. I mean, it's pretty early on that we start in on that perspective. So I think about when coming back to the Empire and its state, why you chose to have that point of view, and then kind of why you chose to come in with an organization like the Patriotists.
It's a good question. I don't know if I can give you a satisfactory answer. I was thinking about what would be the fallout or possible fallout of the conclusion of Midnight Tides, the 5th book, and how would the society and the civilization evolved from that point, where it now had the equivalent of the Normans in England ruling everything, but from a state of naivety that I think then became something that could be exploited. And so social control at that point became much easier. in many respects. And I think within that vacuum, these things appear. And that was just how I sort of saw that civilization shaking itself out. And also they are there in opposition to the changes coming to that place via Tahol and Bug. So, you got to set up the two extremes before you take one of them down. Because in a sense, it justifies the taking down of that system. So I guess that's the role it plays.
What do you mean by justifies?
What do I mean by justifies? Well, Tahol has his reasons for bringing the system down, and the level of tyranny that is built into that system by that point certainly appears as sufficient justification for bringing that system down, at least in Tahol's eyes. I mean, it's not like Tahol would inherit the Letheri Empire unchanged.
Sure.
So that needs to be sort of set up early, that when he becomes Tahol the only, there will be changes in the Empire.
Mm-hmm. What do you think makes... I mean, obviously we see here like the tipping point of the Letheri Empire, and we see the ineffectiveness of the Eater at creating their own empire. What do you think it is about the Malazan Empire that has like given it, like helped it maintain this success, even through like times of revolt in places like the Seven Cities? What are they doing better than everyone else?
I don't know. In many ways, it's like they've reached a critical mass in terms of their sheer size, so that even local conditions cannot actually affect great change. And so if there's going to be change within the empire, it's got to come from the center, from the core. So what goes on elsewhere? In many ways, if the Roman Empire hadn't decided to split into the East and West, you might have a completely different history of the Roman Empire. And in a sense, at its height, the Roman Empire had reached that kind of critical mass where even if there are problems and there are flaws within it, it will just chug along, at least until it didn't, historically anyways. So
it's not maybe at this point, I just think the Malazan Empire is doing it better, and we're going to see it not do better eventually. That'd be great.
Yeah, well, you haven't got to, the new trilogy, the Karsa one, is 10 years after the 10th book.
See, even that, Steve, feels like a spoiler, because now I know that the world does not explode at the end of book 10, which truthfully felt still possible.
Really?
Everything's so wild in your books all the time.
Yeah, I don't think I would. I mean, if I'd ended on the destruction of the world, that's a pretty nihilistic ending, wouldn't you say?
It's true. You also write yourself out of a, franchise. So
it's a story about compassion.
You got to keep the IP going.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
Hello, everybody. Producer AJ here. How you doing? It's been a while. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the podcast, and thank you, as always, to Steve for coming on the show and tolerating my rambling questions. There are more to come, do not worry. Also, just wanted to quick apologize for some of the audio issues you may have noticed in the ep. Pete was out of town, away from their usual setup, and I forgot to tell Steve to wear headphones, so there might be some echo there. Whoops. If you'd like to get your thoughts or feelings about this or any of our episodes, you can always email us 10verybigbooks@gmail.com, tweet us at 10verybigbooks, or you can head on over to our Discord, bit.ly/VBB Discord. That's capital V, capital B, capital B, capital D, Discord. That link will be in the show notes. Thank you to all of our wonderful patrons over on Patreon. If you'd like to financially support the show, you can head on over to patreon.com/10verybigbooks. That link will also be in the show notes. We've released some pretty fun bonus episodes this year, including one where we talk with our friend Nathan about the fourth Star Trek movie. I forget what the subtitle is, but it's the fourth one where they go to 1980s Earth. So that's fun. And as always, thank you so very much to Dan Gesrick for making our spectacular cover art. You can follow him on Twitter at @A_W_DanG for concerns about the Madagascar cinematic universe. And of course, the wonderful music in today's episode, including the remixed intro and outro track, is by the one, the only Amaranthin from his album The New Romantic, which you can find along with his other music, including a single of the remix show theme on bandcamp.com. Links to their pages will be in the show notes, and 10 Very Big Books will be back in 2 weeks on April 15th, talking about the prologue and chapters 1, 2, and 3 of Toll the hounds. Awoo, season 8 is here. Thank you. I'll talk to you then. Thank you so much for listening. Let's get back to the conversation. Partly this book is kind of about, like, to me, like this building up and tearing down of, like, I don't know, structures of power and stuff, I guess. And like one way that we haven't touched on yet is through this idea of like worship and stuff, with, I mean, like literal worship with like the crippled god and whatnot, and with Male and the errant. Like these ideas are brought up a few times, but the crippled god straight up says, like, I can't remember who it is who's trying to like draw on his power or whatever, and he says something to the effect of like, you all made me this way. Like, I am only this, like, you know, crippled hurting mass because of all of the people who worship him. And then there's all this talk throughout of Male's, the cult of Male, like making a return or whatever, and how Male can like feel them and hear them and stuff. And like, I don't know, these ideas of the worshipped being shaped by the worshipers, I think is so literally, I think is just like a really, really cool thing. What, like, I don't know, made you want to like write about those ideas in that way?
Well, consider the alternative, which is more or less what we're experiencing in our world, where you can pray to a god or series of gods. You can be a person of faith. You can be someone who is devout, and you can, on occasion, believe and hear the voice of your deity. But the deity does not show up physically in front of you. And the deity, at least in our sense here in this world, for the most part, maybe Judeo-Christian only, views the deity as a omnipotent and omniscient and benevolent entity to some extent.
Right.
But in the Malazan world, the gods are simply ascendant beings. And so they're more Olympian than they are anything else.
Okay.
So they have personalities, which means they have flaws, and they are present. So here in this world, the question of, you know, you look at the crimes, say, maybe committed in the name of one religion or another, one church or another. Sure. Residential schools here in Canada, for example, the treatment of native children. And yet one cannot sort of argue that somehow impugns the deity, God himself, right? It's simply the flaws of the mortals. Mm-hmm. So there's no feedback. There's no feedback between the mortals and their gods in that sense, right? Guilt cannot be passed upward, as it were. So in the Malazan world, this is a very different scenario. It's one in which there is efficacy to both the believer and the believed. And so there's a biofeedback mechanism at work, and one affects the other and vice versa. One has greater power individually, but numerically the other has greater power. So you got this tug of war that's between the two. And the gods are they are flawed and they have personalities, and they have to try to manage their own sense of self with the belief systems that are built up around them. And so I always just found that an interesting sort of approach to things, where it becomes a true dialogue as opposed to an entirely internal one, which exists in our world.
Kind of in both worlds, whether this dialogue is internal or literal, the shape of the deity is, or the deity is shaped by the worshiper. Which is,
to some extent, yes. And of course that's, I mean, one can argue whether that's the case here as well. I mean,
sure, but
we don't know. I mean, it's more of a philosophical question than anything else.
Sure.
But with fantasy, of course, you take the metaphor, make it real, and you just put it in place and explore it at that point.
Have you ever thought about writing within like an existing framework, or an established pantheon of gods, like Neil Gaiman's American Gods? Have you ever thought about writing in a real world setting and drawing from inspiration from like an existing pantheon of gods, or does that feel like constricting to you as an author?
Well, I don't know if it's constraining. I might get a sense of lacking originality to that. I mean, it's been done a whole lot. And you mentioned American Gods. Well, I think Tim Powers did a far better job of that kind of story than Gaiman did.
Ooh.
You know, having read Tim Powers,
no, I'm typing his name in right now.
Drawing of the Dark, Anubis Gates, Stress of Her Regard, they are extraordinary books, and I could not hope to match them. And so if somebody's been there, done it, and I absolutely adore what they did, you know, why would I fall into the wake of that?
Yeah.
And try to do my own thing?
Like, where do you view, or how do you view rather, like historical fiction, like creating stories out of?
I do read it. Yeah, I quite often I read it because generally, you know, the ones that really sort of make their mark, like Hilary Mantel, people like that, they've done their research and they're very good writers. Yeah. I was just recently at ICFA, actually. We were talking about Bernard Cornwell's Arthurian trilogy, which I thought was probably the best take on the Arthurian. And, you know, in that respect, I mean, kudos to anybody with the ambition to tackle, you know, such a well-known mythology, a myth and story. And Bernard Cornwell did a fabulous job with that. So,
would you ever dabble in historical fiction or something of the like? Because I know you're a pretty well-read person.
This is ridiculous. I'll never get to it. I had an idea for a story called The Last Vandals on Earth. It would actually be the last of the Vandal tribe, which ended up in, well, I guess Libya, modern day Libya. So you have to imagine that they were they came from somewhere northeastern Germany, I guess, somewhere around there. But probably before that, the steppes in the east. They wandered all the way down, stopped off in Rome to sack it and take as much as they want. Ended up then... This is migrating peoples. They ended up moving across to Hispania, where they conquered, then became something of seafaring peoples in the sense that they then traveled across to North Africa and conquered that. And they were there for, I'm not sure, maybe 120 years, something like that, and then just promptly disappeared. The Berbers overthrew them, and they just disappeared from history.
Wow. So
my story idea was, I think about 6, because, you know, I like squad size. 6 Vandals left on the run, fleeing desert tribes, and taking the story from there as they head towards, I think I was planning to head them towards Jerusalem originally. It was going to be kind of a comic, dark kind of novel. There it is.
Now, if we start, I want this right now. Can we start it? Can we start a GoFundMe? And what is your price?
No price is possible. It's all down to time.
Fair.
You know, it's all down to time. If I clear away the stuff I'm working on, then I may just sit down and pop that one out because it would be a fun story. And I know I did, I think the first chapter a few years back, assuming I can find it. And the characters, they were a lot of fun.
It sounds like it.
Sort of halfway between Malazan Marines and Tregal Trade Guild. Sort of stuck in between the two.
Speaking of time, do you have any thoughts on Brandon Sanderson and his absolutely ludicrous work pace that he just has those books in the tank?
Apparently, he's got a fairly large team. He's an organization. He's a company in that respect. So I think he's got at least 3 tiers of readership, advanced readers, and editors, and all the rest. So he's an extraordinary businessman.
Never thought about it like that. Like writing the book, then you have to wait for the editor to read it and make the revisions and send it back. Wow, I never thought of that.
Yeah, well, he's got his own publishing house too, doesn't he? So he can write and publish. It's all in-house there. So in that respect, he's not reliant upon, like, he can give deadlines and his staff will provide, they'll meet those deadlines.
Right.
You send a manuscript off to a publisher, and if you're lucky, you'll get, something back in 8 months' time.
Sure.
It's just the nature of the beast.
So AJ asked about historical fiction. I've been reading some crime fiction recently. And I'm looking aside from the fantasy aisle to the other genre aisles, to your crimes, to your romances, to your spies. And I just wonder what your horrors, if you will. I wonder if you have a relationship with other genre fiction and how much you've dabbled in those other types of genre fiction.
Well, I partly grew up reading spy novels, that kind of thing. my mother, I seem to recall, was a big fan of James Bond, and then the crime stuff, Perry Mason, Matt Helm. Anyways, sort of a lot of the noir stuff was stuff she was reading. And then I think I read a fair bit of Robert Ludlum, and Tom Clancy. So that kind of stuff was good reads, good books to take with me on a dig.
Mm.
Have you read any Harlan Coben? Because I have not, but this fool has destroyed my Netflix suggestions because I watched everything that is from him and I'm obsessed now.
There's a lot of adaptations of his stuff right now, isn't there?
Yeah. And boy, howdy, are they all the same. And every time it just sucks me right back in. I don't know how he does it.
Very similar in that respect, I guess, to Elmore Leonard, maybe a precursor to that, when suddenly all of Leonard's books are being picked up right, left, and center. Some works are very well suited for film and television, and that, I mean, I would say that's probably one of the strongest genres out there in film and television. Maybe always has been. The police procedural or the mystery genres. They're just perfectly made for this kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, either it ends on a bow, on like a nice little tied in a bow, or there's a cliffhanger every time, and it's so perfect.
And you can see that bleeding into podcasts too, with true crime being, like the top 3 biggest podcasts are, a true crime podcast. Like it's wild. I've
got a question, Steve. If you were going to have a podcast, what would you make it about?
I was going to have a podcast.
Everyone's got one, man. I don't know if you're aware.
It's true. They're giving them to anyone.
I might do one on archaeology, maybe.
That's fair. That tracks.
Classics, classical history, antiquities, maybe. But there's plenty of those out there, so it's just one more drop in the ocean. It's I don't know. I'm not really inspired in that direction.
The audio medium's not your forte.
No, not really.
That's fair.
Speaking of mediums, and you bring up this idea of like, crime being perfect for visual. In the conversation that Pete and Iskar Jarak had with Cam, where we released that episode, I guess last week at time of recording, brought up that you had originally written Gardens of the Moon as a screenplay. Mm-hmm. Have you, and I think the reason Cam gave was that it's just like, it's easier to write a screenplay than it is to like do a whole, have you done that with any of your other works? Like written it as kind of a more bare bones thing, I guess, first, and then gone back and filled out the details?
No, not really. Well, I mean, I just co-wrote a screenplay with Ben and Jay Coles for a project we're working on, science fiction, space-based project. Cool. But how we're going to adapt that, there'll be more information forthcoming.
Sure.
We're not going the traditional route on that one. So
we got all the hits today.
Yeah.
But Cam and I wrote 4 or 5 feature films. So, and that was the stuff we were doing first. But trying to get that stuff off the ground here in Canada was well, about as depressing an exercise as one can imagine. Mm-hmm. So we kind of sort of threw in the towel at that point and decided to go to novels instead. So Gardens of the Moon, the screenplay was actually only took place in Darujistan. Mm-hmm. And it starts, I think, with the assassin war on the roof with Crocus.
Oh.
That's where it started. So it was more kind of Indiana Jones style, headlong pitched adventure type stuff with comedic elements to it. And then we did, the second one was called Black Dog Blues. And that was a lot of the Black Dog campaign, which is not yet seen light of day in novel form. But I think Cam's heading in that direction with his new stuff.
Is that related to the Mottwood? Am I crazy there?
Yeah. The Mottwood's right there.
Yep. Okay, that's what I thought. I think we just got some more hints about that in. I think it was in this book. I forget. And I would love to see that stuff fleshed out. I think that's such a cool part of this history that we don't know.
Yeah, we gamed a lot of that. So that's what the script was also based on.
That's awesome.
Very cool.
Do you think any of those scripts will ever see the light of day, or are they doomed for the shoebox?
I don't even know if we have them anymore. I may have some copies kicking around. No, we lost Gardens of the Moon. I think Cam has 3 1/4 inch floppies of
Love that.
Black Dog Blues. I think I've got some files of, oh man, the first one we wrote, we sold, but then the producer crashed and burned after about 3 years. And we don't have that one, I don't think. That one's gone. Because when the producer crashed and burned, another company picked up all of his products and I guess stuck it on a shelf somewhere to collect dust.
Mm-hmm.
And then we did another script. There were two of them that was sort of, one was an urban comedy and the other one was a rural comedy that were kind of bookends. And I think we optioned the first one, the urban one, 3-4 times. But again, funding in Canada is so dependent upon telefilm, which is a federal or national funding program. And trying to jump through those hoops just wasn't working. We these novels were magic realism, and it's like they didn't even know what that was. And it was very, very frustrating. And we had one called Lawn Maintenance and the Primordial Soup. And it had a whole storyline that about 2 years later kind of showed up briefly in The Fisher King with Robin Williams. But we were told 2 years earlier that you can't make these kind of films. So, and we were told that all the time. I mean, our first film was a comedy horror, and we were told you can't mix comedy and horror.
That's devastating.
Yeah, it was depressing, and we struggled and struggled. So yeah, the novels there's in a sense more control over the product because you're actually producing the product from start to finish.
Sure.
Whereas with film, you hand it over and things change.
Yeah.
It seemed to be the safer route, obviously.
The safer route is to write
Yeah.
3 million words.
Yeah.
And say, yeah, here you go.
Pretty much.
Yeah, no, but yeah, that's funny.
Steve, have you read anything that has, or had anything that's really inspired you lately in the last few months or so of this year?
I'm going to surprise lots of people. I've read a 10 or 11 book series that was self-published. And it's called, the author is called Craig Allinson. And I would highly recommend you guys actually tackle this series. It's called Expeditionary Force. But to actually do it as audio, because the reader is phenomenal. And it is extremely funny. And the world building, the universe building is among the best I've seen. The books themselves, here's an example of one right here. I'm showing you.
Yeah, I pulled them up.
Amazon published, self-published. And the layout is, Craig, but it's atrocious. So that can be a knock on things. And his writing style is very much a kind of run-on sentence style with misuse of commas instead of periods. So, a copy editor would have been absolutely awesome for this stuff. But it didn't bother me because the story was so freaking good. And I've actually just reread it. So this is the first series I've reread in decades. Wow. And only about 3 years between the two.
Wow.
And it's just funny. It's very funny.
Wow.
And good stories.
There we go.
There you go. I think the first one's called
Columbus Day.
Yes. Yeah, it's a play on Independence Day.
Nice.
Steve, do you ever give blurbs for books? Are you asked to give blurbs?
I don't give very many blurbs, no. I think what happens is people send me fantasy novels, and I don't read fantasy anymore. But they send them to me because I write fantasy.
Sure.
But I don't read fantasy novels. So
Do you just send that back every time?
No, I don't send it back. But, I feel real bad about it because there's that expectation there. And sometimes, I'm getting colleagues and friends, people I know who are sending me stuff. And if they send it to me electronically, I have tried reading electronically, like on my computer. But I work on my computer, and I just can't do it. I can't do it. And I feel really bad about it. So, yeah, I don't read fantasy. And obviously, nobody sends me science fiction novels for blurbs.
Do you ever read a good Western?
Lonesome Dove. Larry McMurtry was phenomenal.
I've got a bunch of Louis L'Amours from my pop-up I'm working through right now. And they are it's just such a different style.
Yeah. I'm one of the few people who absolutely loved the Lonesome Dove long series adaptation, the original one with Robert Duvall and the guy from he was Men in Black, the older guy.
Oh, Tommy Lee Jones.
Yeah, and it's a long series, and it takes its time, and I just adored it. Television series, one of the first sort of really extensive long series.
Mm-hmm. I've watched probably hundreds of Western movies with my pop-up over the years.
Yeah, me too.
It would not shock me if I've seen some of this.
It takes its time. I mean, it's very, very slow start, but man, by the time you get to the end of it, it's a killer.
You mentioned you don't read fantasy anymore. Is there a specific reason why, or just a change of taste or so?
Change of taste, maybe. Initially, I switched to other genres because when I was writing the fantasy, just to avoid any influence. But then I've just gotten into the habit of reading other stuff.
Here's a question I've been thinking about with the fantasy genre recently.
I think about the fantasy genre's capacity to function as a society novel or to lobby a kind of societal critique or analysis if they're erecting this, fantastical world or a secondary world. So I just wonder what you think about the fantasy genre's capacity to make, those types of points.
I don't know. I mean, the fandom for fantasy and science fiction is pretty volatile. And so there's pushback, that comes back on the authors, probably for many things that it never even occurred to them to think what was problematic. I'm really not sure. I've struggled with believing that literature can have any effect on the real world. So it's a question I can't answer. I just don't know.
It's a morbid thought.
Well, maybe morbid. It's probably self-protective more than anything else. If you don't think, if you don't go into it with this notion that you're going to change the world, then you avoid disappointment because you don't. So,
on the contrary, I think podcasting is really how you change the world.
Oh yeah.
So I think after this call, I think we've run and done it.
We've done it, yeah.
Are you okay, India? You're frowning.
Honestly, I think that's like my focus face is a very upset face. So, also my straight face. Resting bitch face, Steve?
Mm-hmm.
I have it.
Are you upset about something?
Steve.
I didn't know whether you were upset about something in the book or just upset in a general sense.
Oh, no. This book I really liked.
You liked it? Cool.
I thought this was a good one. I don't know where I put it on my rating, though.
You don't have to
We did a rating.
Yeah, you don't have to rate things. You just like them or you don't like them.
Yeah, I guess that's so. I rate everything. I think it's part of my, whatever. But actually, I have one more question. When you write these books and then and now you don't even read fantasy anymore, do you still like it, though?
As a genre?
Yeah.
Wow. That's a really good question. It's a kind of question that I'm struggling to avoid answering. The thing is, I'm under contract for writing 3 more fantasy novels. If I did not enjoy writing in the genre, I would not be able to do them. But it was a question that I actually had to ask myself when I sat down to write The God Is Not Willing, because that was returning to the fantasy genre. And I was quite relieved to find I really enjoyed writing it. And so that was a good thing, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, you don't have to enjoy reading it to enjoy writing it.
Nice. Thank you.
I think that was, well, how is it going for you?
It's not bad. I'm sort of, because I flew to Orlando, there's all these things you have to do crossing the border. And so that was a bit of a pain in the butt.
Were you horrified that there is no COVID in Florida, or?
Well, yeah, exactly. I stayed outside of the hotel by the pool for most of the conference. I didn't attend. I think I attended one panel and did not attend the luncheons or the banquets. I just did not feel comfortable with doing that. And it's like anywhere else. There's people who wear masks and then there's people who don't. And
not though, Steve. It's not like any Florida is it. They don't even have to. They're not even mandated to.
I know. So I was doing a lot of selective elevator rides, basically. If people crowded in there without a mask, I just waited for the next elevator. I was self-testing. In fact, I self-tested all but 2 of the days when I was there. And then on the last day for the flight back, I self-tested twice, actually. One had to be online with sort of an official medical establishment, a clinic. Otherwise, I can't get back into my country. So
That's crazy.
Mm.
But that's not crazy, but like.
Yeah, it's how it is. But it's I find travel stressful enough, and this just sort of added to it. And that was a bit of a pain. Especially I've got to go to Europe this summer. That's the plan anyways. First the UK and then a book tour in France. And I'm just hoping that things will settle down a little bit, but I'm not optimistic on that.
Am I crazy, or was this French book tour planned for like 2 years ago before the pandemic? Or am I wrong?
It was kind of planned, but because the French publisher was publishing 2 volumes a year, so they're closing in on the 10th one. So the timing, and this is the first time that me and Cam will be touring together.
Exciting.
Yeah,
Wow.
I'm really looking forward to that.
Do you and Cam plan on doing any gaming while you're on tour together?
Gaming? No.
Ah,
Those days are gone.
Malazan 2, you know.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I feel like the ship has sailed on that.
I think so.
Have you seen any good movies?
No.
we're just chilling now.
I know.
In fairness, though, like I don't want to just, you're a person on top of your career.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you.
In case you didn't know.
I've not seen anything. Can't remember the last time I was in the cinema. Oh, for James Bond, I think. The last James Bond. It's the last thing I've seen.
Wow.
Gosh, I don't even know when that came out. But
yeah, I missed Dune. I may end up missing Batman.
Oh, I haven't seen Dune yet. I need to.
I tried to watch Dune and I physically can't get through the first 15 minutes every single time. And I read more of it than I could. I read more of the book than I can get through the movie.
Are you a Dune fan?
I enjoyed the first book, but I've not reread it. And so when did I read it? I was 15, 16. So, often when I say that I stole the structure for Gardens of the Moon from Dune, I did, but just the structure. Not much else sort of survived in my memory.
And this can be off. So correct me if I'm wrong. Did we ever talk about mushrooms on this?
Mushrooms?
Yeah.
Do you mean the like grocery store mushrooms?
Not like grocery store mushrooms.
Right, okay. Forest floor mushrooms.
The magical kind.
The magical kind. No, we've not talked about that, India.
Okay. I just have a very brief question. So I know that you have, been out in the camping and archaeologist things. I was just curious. Have you ever just like, have you and the people ever just been like, guys, you want a trip?
I don't even know if there are magic mushrooms in Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Ontario, and the places that I work. Maybe there are.
They probably are.
Yeah, back then there were only 2 mushrooms that I could recognize, and they were both edible. So, so we foraged when we were surveying, and if you find those mushrooms, you collect them.
You foraged?
Yeah, when you're surveying, you get hungry, you want a snack.
Shut up.
You were snacking earlier. I watched you. I saw you doing
Right,
it.
but mine was from the grocery store.
Well, puffballs, for example, before they spore, they're good, very tasty. But as for the hallucinogenic kind, I mean, I'm living here on the West Coast, which is sort of, it's the place for it. But I've never gone out collecting.
All right.
I'm aware of microdosing. I think
Yes.
it's probably very, very useful. And my thoughts are, from what I've read, that the clinical use of any hallucinogenic from that family anyways, is probably very beneficial.
I think so too. I've been doing a lot of YouTubes.
Mm-hmm.
And also you're very creative. So I just figure like creative people often like
Well,
sex scares a little
yes,
bit, so.
there's certainly, if you go back far enough in my past, there's a few sort of, dropped acid.
There it is.
What else?
We got him.
Peyote. Peyote, which was sort of the precursor to ayahuasca in many respects.
Oh, so cool. The coolest.
Well, you're, as an anthropology student, at least at University of Manitoba, one's instructors usually are experienced in these areas. So,
Of course they are. What a
so
trip, literally.
I just want to double check. You're okay if we leave that on the podcast, or would you rather have that cut out?
I don't care. I mean, it's so long ago now.
I just want to make sure.
It's such a stigmatized freaking thing. It's so stupid.
I mean, it's
totally
been
agree.
weeks since my last flashback, so.
That's
Nice.
good.
Nice.
Ayahuasca, huh? You are. I thought, but I didn't think. I was like, no. Let's try shrooms. You exceeded my expectations, as you do.
You've passed.
There was no like passing or failing here. It was just.
Well, these things exist in every society across the planet. We've been engaged in mind-altering substances from the very beginning. It's only sort of really strange artificial impositions that are making this stuff, illegal or unacceptable. It was a primary treatment for mechanism by which shamans practiced, for example. And there's strong evidence that the earliest wines and beers were potent hallucinogens. They were mixed with other things, and they were part of the religious experience, the spiritual experience for a lot of people. So I don't see it. I mean, I don't recognize it as being in any way unethical or immoral or anything along those lines. I think it's part of the human condition, and it always has been. And don't sweat it.
Agreed. No, well, now you guys can. Now I'm done. Now I'm really done.
Well, I feel like we put minimal effort into the Reaper's Gale part of this interview. I'm just going to say it out loud.
That's okay.
Everyone knows what they want to know.
Yeah, look, they read the book.
They read the book.
They read the book.
They come here for the hangs.
Well, listen, Steve, we appreciate you swinging by.
It was fun. Quite relaxed. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, we did too. Okay, everybody, that'll do it for us here today. Thanks again to Steve for dropping by, and thank you for listening.
If you have any thought for 10 Very Big Books at Gmail and Twitter. And our next episode, we're starting Reaper's Gales. Nope. We're starting Toll the Hound.
Yeah.
And it'll be out. We're a little tired from all these podcasts. We're taking a bonus week. Toll the Hounds is going to start on April 15th with prologue and the first 3 chapters of the book. As you've heard, we've already read them. We're having a great time. And until then, see you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.